I believe it was Walker. Can you hear that? Is that all right? My oldest said the other day, he's like, "Man, Derrick, y'all sure have gone to Greenwood a lot lately." And he's like, "Are y'all moving? Are we moving to Greenwood?" It's like, no. But about a month ago, we were able to be here for our anniversary and stay at the Alluvian. And then Harris asked me last week, I believe it was, to speak at the FCA there at Pillow, and was able to do that. And then y'all have honored me in coming and speaking here for your homecoming 70 years. And it has truly been a blessing, and thank you so much. Acts chapter 12, if you will. So King Herod seeked after James, and he got him. And he took James's life, and now the blood is on King Herod's hand, and he loved it. He loved it so much that now he is pursuing someone else. Now he's pursuing Peter. Imagine for a minute knowing that someone is literally after you to take your life. How would you respond in that situation? Just had to read about the individuals there in Oregon having to make a choice. Do you stand for God or do you sit down? You're in this situation. Peter is being chased by an individual who has tasted death or tasted the blood and now is coming after him. What are you going to do? Well, before you find the answer here of what Peter did, what would you think Peter would do once he's caught and is about to face death? If you remember back in Matthew chapter 14, we see Peter with the disciples and they're on a boat. The waves get extremely furious and they see a ghost or what they appear to be a ghost and they're frightened by it. And Christ's like, "Listen, it's not a ghost." And Peter said, "Well, then call me out, on the water." And what does he do? He gets out. A type of faith in which, I would love to have, and which many of us would love to have, is step out on the boat. But then as the winds got a little bit rough and the waves, we all know the story. We told about it when we were in child school there. What happens? It loses the focus. He is not ready to face death, and he begins to drown. All right, Peter is being pursued by King Herod. He is caught. What does he do? All right, so you follow along, you're trying to figure out how would he respond to this situation of fixing to face death, because obviously that's what's about to happen, right? He's not going to just let him go or anything like that. He is caught with the purpose of being killed. Well, we know that Peter, when he's on a boat ready to face death, he does what? I need help. He begins to drown. Waves begin to go chaos all around me. I need help. And then you find him in Matthew chapter 14 and verses 22 and 23 there. Here he is with a crowd of people following Christ to Golgotha, and a servant girl says, "Are you not one of his followers? Are you not one of his disciples?" And listen what he says. "I am not." All right, so you have Peter who steps out of the boat and waves get very difficult, not ready to die from the storm and from drowning, which would be a horrible way, but here's me chasing a rabbit. That's one of the reasons I would rather not get on an airplane. There's no hope of flying. There is. I can swim for a little while. All right, so I can take a boat anywhere. Anyway, so that's another thing. But anyway, so he is drowning, and he's not ready to die yet. He's around a crowd of people, and a slave girl says, "Are you not one of the ones that were with him?" He says, "I am not." And now look at Acts chapter 12. In verse 6, he is chained between two soldiers, and what is he doing? He's asleep. Have you ever caught that? Have you ever wondered, the same reason why I wondered, how in the world did Peter get to a point in his life where he steps out of a boat and he's terrified of death? He's around a crowd of people and a slave girl says, "Hey, are you not one of them?" He says, "No," because if he did say, "I am a follower," he is about to be put to death, to a point where now he is asleep between two soldiers, ready to die. Now, he doesn't know what's fixing to take place. He doesn't know, some things are about to change that, but he is ready to face death. How did Peter get to a point in his life where he wasn't ready to drown, being in the presence of the Son of God? He wasn't ready to die by even being in the presence of God, in presence of the Son of God, to where now Christ is not even right there walking with him, but he is in a prison, asleep between two soldiers. How did he get from one extreme to the other extreme? I believe the simple answer is this: he found peace. The New Testament refers to peace as this tranquility. It's rest. And you think about him in the boat, and when he steps on the water, that's exactly what it wasn't. So the physical aspect of it was pure chaos. In the inside of Peter's life was pure chaos, even though he's been a follower of Christ just for a little while. And then you see the crowd of people, which I'm not a big fan of Disney World because of people. In crowds of people, we thought it was wise to go at a certain time because all the kids are in school here, but it was when all the kids were out of school there in Europe, so they all came to Disney World. It was horrible. Tons of people, crowds of people, chaos. And there it is, chaos where Peter was, but that's not the chaos that was bothering him. There was zero rest inside. And then at some point from then to him standing up in Acts chapter 2 and speaking, to him there in Acts chapter 12 being chained ready to die, there was peace inside. And I think in order to understand this peace, let's go to John chapter 3 and John chapter 4. And I want us to look at John chapter 4 a little differently than the way that we usually look at it, or the way we've been taught. Not that the way that we've been taught it was wrong, by any means, it was not. But just look at it a little bit differently this time. If you look at John chapter 3 and John chapter 4, you have Nicodemus, you have the Samaritan woman there at the well. Two of these are the most different individuals in the world. One coming from an extremely high social class to another one who's at its lowest. She is a woman, she's a Samaritan woman, she's not viewed any better than the insect that is on the bottom of your shoe. But they are exactly the same because they're needing something. Now, the answer this evening or this afternoon is a really easy answer in looking at how we need peace. But I want us to look at this in John chapter 4. So, this lady comes to the well. She's needing water. She's carrying her water pot, and for the whole purpose of drawing water. And we know the story. She comes in contact with the Son of God, and the exchange goes back and forth because she is like, trying to hide a little bit about who she is and where she's from, stuff like that. But I want us to look at that saying that we're all very familiar with. John chapter 4 and verse 24. I guess before we do that, we'll go up to 16. We'll start in 16. Jesus said to her, "Go, call your husband and come here." And the woman answered him, "I have no husband." Jesus said to her, "You are right in saying, 'I have no husband,' for you have had 5 husbands, and the one you now have is not your husband. What you have said is true." And the woman said to him, "Sir, I perceive that you are a prophet. Our fathers worshipped on this mountain, but you say that in Jerusalem is a place where people ought to worship." Jesus said to her, "Woman, believe me, The hour is coming when neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem will you worship the Father. You worship what you do not know. We worship what we know, for salvation is from the Jews. But the hour is coming, and now is here, when the true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and in truth. For the Father is seeking such people to worship Him. God is spirit, and those who worship Him must worship in spirit and in truth. So the way that we normally look at this is, in dealing with the spirit aspect of it, we say that, the way we use that, when we come to worship in spirit and truth, that we come with the right frame of mind, we come with our attitude has got to be right, and our heart is focused, and we're in a good mood. I want us to look at this maybe just a little bit different in this aspect. Was Christ's purpose in talking to the Samaritan woman for her to have a good attitude when she comes into worship? Was she struggling with her attitude at one of these two places in which she would say, listen, do we go here, Mount Gerizim, or do we go to Jerusalem to worship? And is Christ saying, hey, you just got to get your attitude right? Now, I believe that is true. When it comes to our spirit, it has got to be true. That word there is pneumos. It's in this sense of oneness. Oneness with who? God. So is she having just an attitude problem? Or what is she lacking that is identical to the very thing that Nicodemus is lacking? See, she was trying to obviously draw Jesus off a little bit, but, here's the thing. When we come to worship, Christ said, it doesn't matter where you come to worship. Now, it's going to come to a point where it doesn't matter if it's going to be here, under a tree, in somebody's house, whatever it is, there's going to be something that's going to take place that you need and that Nicodemus needs in order for you to be one with God. Now, if you're one with God, then you're happy. Then your heart's going to be right, and you're going to come to worship, and it's going to be in the good frame of mind, good attitude. But guess what? She didn't have it yet. She was missing something. Nicodemus was missing something. And what was it? You can see Christ going, it's me. And so you have two people coming from completely two different sides of the world and classes of people. And he's saying, listen, it's going to come where you're going to worship me in spirit and in truth. But you cannot, with the frame of mind that you're in, woman, you're not going to be able to go and approach God anymore. Why? Because Jesus is not in the picture in your life right now. So it doesn't matter if you go up to Mount Gerizim or if you go to Jerusalem. Until you know who I am, you're not going to be able to do that. And so, you're talking about a chaotic life. Nicodemus had one. The Samaritan woman definitely had one. And in order for her to find peace, Christ is saying, I'm standing right here looking at you. And that peace is what's going to bring you to God and in His throne. It's going to be me. And nothing else is going to bring that. I want us to look at a few things here. In Psalms chapter 85, this is called by some, this is the landscape of tranquility. But in Psalms 85, I love the way that he words this. In verse 10 and 11, 10 through 13, steadfast love and faithfulness meet. Listen to this. Righteousness and peace kiss each other. Faithfulness springs up from the ground, and righteousness looks down from the sky. Yes, the Lord will give what is good, and our Lord will yield its increase. Righteousness will go before Him and make His footsteps a way. In Isaiah 32, says in verse 15, until the Spirit is poured upon us from on high, and the wilderness becomes a fruitful field, and the fruitful field is deemed a forest, then justice will dwell in the wilderness, and righteousness abide in the fruitful field. So you have, the way they put it is that heaven and earth met together, and it met together where they met and where they kissed. And where they kiss is that peace, and the way that they described it is, it met in a stable. That is where the righteousness and faith and the peace, it's where they all came together, and it was there born in a stable. And that's that tranquility that people sometimes, they don't find. They're not walking in that landscape, in that green and beautiful grass of understanding that. It's being consumed by that. That is stepping into a stable, which nobody likes. When you think about it, I mean, you really don't want to step into a stable because it stinks, but not this one. This stable smells good. And so when you walk into this stable where the Son of God has been born, then you breathe everything and it consumes you, everything about it. And she has not been consumed yet by the Son of God. And so the Samaritan woman's life is not at rest. It's chaos. It's that wave. It's everything that's going about. And so many times when we think about our lives, there's so much heartache and it's so difficult at times. And you look at that, it's maybe because we have not consumed ourselves with and breathed everything that you find in that stable. And Psalms 34. In order to have this peace, there's something that must take place, and it takes place in verse 14. Turn away from evil and do good, and here's this one word, seek peace and pursue it. See, I think the disciples had a lot of trouble in doing this. The disciples had been following him, but I don't know if seeking him is really what they were really good at. And they definitely wasn't good at focusing aspect of it. The woman, on the other hand, did not seek after it, but when she found it and realized what was before her, she completely focused on it and seeked after it. I don't know if you've ever really looked for something. I've got to tell this story, and I can't remember. It was about Braden. And we were in St. Louis, thanks to Cliff Mims, told us about a place there, the Children's Museum. And the Children's Museum is Lily, have you been there? Have you seen it or heard about it? It's absolutely amazing. It's 12 stories of an abandoned shoe factory that the city of St. Louis had given to some artists. And said, hey, we need you to turn this to a museum for kids. And so they had a 3 to 4 story cave inside of it. One way in, one way out. Until they met my middle son, Braden. And it is the mount. I mean, they literally had it, crevices everywhere, and you go in and kids could go into, little places, and you couldn't find them. That was it. I mean, once they went in, you just knew they were going to come out. Well, Braden comes out and he said, Mom and Dad, I found this place. You need to come here and check it out. And so we go around the corner. Right when we come around the corner, there's a hole about that big, angled on the floor. And the side of the mountain crevice had come up like this, and you just see Braden go, look, whoo, go right into the hole. Like, oh, man, yeah. And we walk under there, and there's a sign that says, do not enter. And it's literally about that big. There's no way I was fitting in it. So now I began to panic a little bit. This seeking started to take place. So I stick my head down in there. Braden! Pitch black. He doesn't say anything. Now I get louder. Braden! Now the whole shoe factory can hear me. And then all of a sudden one of the workers come by and says, that goes down to the bottom of the well. I about lost it. And then I really try to squeeze myself down in there a little bit more, and I'm yelling, Braden! Nothing. So I get out, and the guy's standing there, and literally he does this. Oh no. It's first time when he said that, first time I felt like that we lost him. Not like you're in a mall and you lose your kid. No, I thought he had died. I thought we had just lost him. And I said, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? And I'm now I'm panicking. All right? And I'm in my mindset, we got to go find him. We got to see, we got to do everything we can to go get my boy. If that's go get a bulldozer and take this whole place down, we're getting underneath this well. And about that time, he pops up out of the hole. This place is awesome. I'm sitting there going, what in the world? And what it was is about 7 feet down at an angle like that, it goes into this long pathway that goes underneath a well. But it's a life-size well that swims in the ocean. I wasn't picturing a whale like an animal or whatever. I'm not picturing that. Picturing underneath the well, he's drowned, he is gone. And I was willing to literally level the whole place to find him. And when you know that heaven and earth met in one place, and from there he lived his life in Philippians chapter 2, we see how his life lived. Seeking that life takes that kind of effort and going after it. Peter didn't get it at the beginning of his life of what it meant to really seek after him. And we talked a little bit about the rabbi following him, literally following not just where he went, but his lifestyle and how he loved, who he was willing to love, how much to love. He wasn't able to do that. And Peter had learned how to seek and find that peace. In Isaiah 26, in Isaiah 26, in verse 3, it says this, you keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on you because he trusts in you. This is a perfect definition of what focus is. That is, you have completely stayed into his presence. And when I picture Peter asleep between two soldiers, and the Peter that was terrified to die on the boat and in the crowd, he obviously, between those 2 points in his life, he found a way to focus on Christ and understood that if there was any peace that was coming at all, it was going to come through the Son of God. And so he lived there with that. He was consumed by that. He breathed everything that the Son of God said and did, and his spirit lived in Peter. Let me tell you what happens when that takes place. Go back to John chapter 4. Whenever you do find that peace, and it's not that it's some peace that you're going to have in this outward sense of this world, but it's the peace that you find inside yourself. Because when it does get dark, and if it hadn't gotten dark for you, it will get dark in your life. There's going to be some hard things to come. And to be honest with you, some island in Tahiti is not going to bring you this peace that Peter had between two soldiers. The money in the world is not going to offer this peace. Only Jesus Christ. But when you find it, let me explain to you what's going to happen. John chapter 4. This is not some big revelation or anything like that. I just find this amazing what the Samaritan woman did. Verse 25, and the woman said to him, I know the Messiah is coming, he who is called Christ. When he comes, he will tell us all things. And Jesus said to her, I who speak to you am he. And Jesus just then his disciples came back. They marveled that he was talking with a woman, but no one said, what do you seek? Or why are you talking with her? And then listen to what she did in verse 28. So the woman left her water jar and went away into town and said to the people. Why is that a big deal? You know, she came down for that was her job. That was an everyday routine thing that she did, was to go down to the well, get water, and take it back. And what you find is she did have to go up a hill, up a mountain. When she got to the top, she used that water. This time her life completely changed. Her life is chaos. There was sin that was taking place, and she was going to have to admit this sin. She was going to have to realize the sin that was in her life. If you're going to have peace in your life, you've got to admit that there is sin in your life. And she finally did. And when she came back down and she finally admitted this sin that was in her life, it was not about her what? Her work. Her peace was not found in her work. Her peace was not found in that water jar, and she left it there. And she went back. Now, for some of us, that's not a really big deal. But when you are willing to leave your work, leave something you spend 8 hours, 14 hours, and if you were like Gary, made us stay there, it seemed like forever out on the farm. And we were praying for that rain cloud that was a mile over there. Just come over here, please. And she left it. But she just didn't leave it. She went back up to the top of the hill. And I believe she really and truly believed that there was chaos in that town. And then Christ begins to work on the disciples. Man, you've been following me this whole time, and you missed it. You're asking me questions while I'm right here with this woman who is in sin. And she got it. She went up and she told everything about them, about what she experienced, the Son of God, and how peace can only be found through Him. And then this is when, at the end, this will be the last thing I say, Christ then looks to the disciples and says, listen, lift up your eyes and see. Seek, focus, because I want you to look what's coming down off that mountain. All these people that this woman went up and told. That if you want peace in your life, you have to admit there's some sin in your life that you've got to get rid of. And that peace can only be found from the guy where heaven and earth met in a barn, where it kissed, where they met together. And he's standing down there at the well. And so, I don't know about you, but I want to be the one that stands up if I'm at college or if I'm at my workplace and somebody comes in and says, hey, who's a Christian? I am. I want to be the one, if I'm standing between two soldiers chained together, that you're ready to go? I'm ready. Paul and Silas, what were they doing in prison? They were singing. And they were praying. Now, we use that to prove why we don't use instruments. I don't think that's the point of that passage. The point is, they had found peace. And they can sing no matter where they are, because they're ready to go. What about you this afternoon? Is there that kind of peace in your life? Have you encountered that peace? We talked about the peace that Moses, or we talked about the encounter that Moses saw with God. We talked about a little bit of Isaiah encountering God and our approach to worship. But what about encountering the chaos that's in your life? Have you encountered that peace that is found at the well? That's Jesus Christ. It's peace that you find when you are baptized into Christ. You have His Spirit, the Spirit of God living in you, that will bring that peace to you. Do you have it? If not, come right now while we stand and sing.